Danbury Farmer Market, and we're gonna make a complete meal that can be eaten for lunch or dinner using mostly the ingredients found right here at the Danbury Farmer Market. So we're going to make a fish taco with homemade pico and side salad and street corn. Now, if you work with me at all, you'll know all I talk about is making your meals complete. What does that mean? That means make the majority of your meals have fruits and or vegetables. Today we're making a lunch or dinner meal, so we're not gonna focus too much on fruits. Make 1/4 of it some sort of protein, and make the other fourth some sort of whole grain. So, if we're making fish tacos, that's gonna look like our fish is gonna be our protein. We're gonna have a ton of vegetables, I'll get there. And our whole grain is gonna be that corn tortilla, which can also be replaced for a whole wheat tortilla, depending really upon your preferences. So for starters, some things we're gonna need are peppers. Peppers you can either saute and add inside the taco for some freshness, or you can put them inside your pico, so really depends again on your flavor preference. Doesn't matter the color, the more the merrier. They always say that more colors mean that there's more antioxidants. So here it looks like we've got some red, green, and even orange. So we're gonna pick these up and include these in our recipe. Another thing to add flavor, again, all about your preferences, is some fresh hot peppers. I love to add these in my pico to give it a little bit of spice. I use the garlic as well as the peppers, makes it a little bit more spicy. But you can also cut these up and top these with your on top of your tacos as well. Okay, so and if we move over here, you will see we have our tomatoes. Now you really can't go wrong. You can use any type of tomato that you want, cherry, heirloom, large tomatoes like these. The best part about making a homemade pico is that you can chop it up. You barely need to measure the ingredients. Just make sure you've got what's there, throw it in your blender, pulse it a few times, and you've got fresh pico. So we'll get a few tomatoes. And then, I did mention, as part of our meal, we will have some corn. Now we're gonna make a street corn in this recipe, just because I think street corn tastes a little better, but usually that has mayo, sour cream, some ingredients that maybe are not as favorable. So we're gonna take the flavor profile of street corn and make it just a little bit healthier so we can meet all our nutrition needs and goals with this recipe. And then last thing that we'll do, well, I did mention for extra vegetables, we will do some fresh lettuce, maybe use the leftover tomatoes that we've got over there, top with a little bit of olive oil and lime. It can be the same lime that we've used in our pico or on top of our fish tacos. So really you can see the goal is to just do one grocery shop or one farmer's market shop, and you're good to go for the night. And then if we go over here, I am grabbing some red and white onion for our recipe. The red onion is going to be great because we can put this on top of our taco to add some flavor. And the white onion, though we will need a little bit more than that, will go perfectly in our pico to give it a little bit of spice and more flavor. Hi everyone, I'm Monica and we are back in the RV&A Teaching Kitchen in Bridgefield, Connecticut. We spent our day at the Danbury's Farmer Market getting some fresh produce, and now we're gonna make a complete meal. Today we're gonna be making fish tacos with a cabbage coleslaw, homemade pico, and side of street corn. To get us started, I am gonna start us off with the fish and the cabbage. So I have already let this fish marinate for about 15 minutes. I let it marinate in a little concoction I made myself of 3 tablespoons olive oil, 1 teaspoon paprika, 1 teaspoon cumin, 1 teaspoon chili powder, and 1 juice of a lime. So as you can see, the recipe actually called for a vegetable oil. While vegetable oil is relatively good to cook with, it does have a high smoke point. It's really not the most nutritious oil there is. Olive oil, on the other hand, is what we would consider more nutritious, but again, it does have a relatively low smoke point, meaning that you're gonna use more of it to cook what you want to cook. So I'm going to switch things up today, and we are going to spray our pan with a little bit of
avocado oil. Avocado oil is a monounsaturated fatty acid, meaning it has anti-inflammatory properties. And so while we cook that up for the fish, actually I'm just gonna let that heat for a little while longer, and we are gonna put the fish on there. Today I chose cod. Now you can make this recipe with cod, tilapia, really any white flaky fish will do. I chose cod because it was a good price at the grocery store, but it's also very nutritious. So it is a relatively low calorie food. Okay, this looks like it's heating up. So it's relatively low calorie. I'm just gonna start with one piece here, and we're gonna do about that. I'm actually gonna lower this. I'm gonna turn this on for 5 minutes. So it's relatively low calorie for 3 ounces, which is about the size of your palm. 3 ounces is generally the amount of protein that you want with every meal. So breakfast, lunch, dinner, you want to have some sort of protein in there. And you can always use your palm of your hand as some sort of guidance. That's a 3 ounce. So if that's an egg, chicken, fish, even that totally, like that's just a good rule of thumb. So it's got about 90 calories for that 3 ounces, 1 gram of fat. And the fat is not a saturated fat. It is some, omega-3s, polyunsaturated, which are anti-inflammatory. And it has 19 grams of protein in it. Now this protein is really high quality protein, meaning that it has all the essential amino acids to facilitate protein muscles synthesis. Which is really important, if you're somebody more, it's important for, part of a healthy diet, specifically in the elderly, to offset any muscle loss, especially, and as well as athletes who are doing some sort of workout regimen that requires strength and resistance. But, protein is appropriate for everybody. So that's a little bit about the fish. We of course will be pairing it. It is a taco, right? So we will be pairing it with, I chose corn tortillas today. No specific reason other than it tastes really good. It's generally unprocessed. I think it's light. It's a little bit lighter than perhaps like a whole wheat tortilla, which is totally another good option. You might get a little bit more fiber in the whole wheat tortilla. But I thought the corn would go a little bit better with the recipe as a whole. Now, one thing I want to point out, you just bear with me for a second. One thing I like to say is, I can tell you, hey, we're gonna make fish tacos with cabbage slaw, and homemade pico and corn, and you can make that recipe almost 1,000 different ways, and it'll all range on some sort of continuum to like really, really healthy, and really not that healthy. And when I say healthy, what does that mean? I mean nourishing, fueling, having an adequate amount of protein, fiber, energy, calories, and micronutrients. Unhealthy would be something that's high in like saturated fats, high calories, but with not a lot of nutrition, meaning no micronutrients, no fiber, no balanced energy. So back to the corn tortillas. The reason that I chose, I chose this brand, but really the brand has nothing to do with what I'm about to say. I always encourage people to look at the back of the label, and you want to look for something, and this is going to be a reoccurring theme, but you want to look for something that is highest in protein, highest in fiber, lowest in sodium, lowest in saturated fats, and the lowest in added sugar. So these corn tortillas, for example, are 100 calories for 2. But again, I don't like to focus on the calories really. I like to focus on the nutrition. So more importantly, there's 3 grams of protein in 2 corn tortillas. There's no added sugars. There's 15 milligrams of sodium, which is really small compared to our daily value, which is about 2,000, 2,300 milligrams. And there's no saturated fat, so I felt like these were a good option to help keep this meal pretty healthy. So while that is cooking, we're going to start with the cabbage. Now, as you can see, I already chopped up the ingredients and laid them out. And I chose a red cabbage because it is really high in fiber and vitamins A and K as well. So for this recipe, it's relatively easy. What I am thinking is after the fish is cooked, we can lay out the tacos with, top it with a cabbage slaw, top it with the homemade pico we're gonna cook up eventually, and then have it with a side of street corn. But we'll get to those two recipes. For right now, you can see I did about 2.5 cups of this purple cabbage. You can do really any color, it doesn't really matter. You're still gonna get the fiber content as well as the micronutrient content as well. So I did right here is a juice of 1 lime, added 3 tablespoons of cilantro. This is 1 fresh jalapeno. Again, the majority of these ingredients are from the Danbury's Farmers Market. So I definitely encourage you to check it out before the season is over. And then lastly, what's a little unique is we have this mayonnaise, but instead of just any old mayonnaise, because mayonnaise can be really high in saturated fat, and this is what I mean. I always encourage you to look at the label, because you can make even a pizza or a hamburger or whatever relatively nutritious, and that's really our goal here. We still want to keep the pleasure in food. We just want to increase the nutrition while we're doing that. So this is 1/4 mayonnaise, and I chose this mayonnaise because, and I'm going to pull out the label over here, so you can see that this mayonnaise is made with olive oil. So again, if you look at the back, mayonnaise generally is going to be a little bit higher in calories. Again, that's okay. I'm not too concerned about the calorie content. I'm concerned about the nutrition content. But what's interesting about this mayonnaise is that there is 1 gram of saturated fat. So that's a lot lower than what you would really usually find in any other sort of mayonnaise. And it has mono and polyunsaturated fats, which are the type of fats that are high in omega-3s and also known to be anti-inflammatory. And you can see here it says omega-3 alpha linolenic acid. That's what ALA means. That is a plant-based, alpha linolenic acid is a plant-based essential omega-3 fatty acid, meaning we need to eat it from our diet to get the benefits of it, meaning our body can't synthesize it using other sort of fatty acids. So it's really crucial we get that from our diet, and it's been shown to have favorable benefits in prevention of cardiovascular disease, stroke, hypertension, and there is more research coming out that there is some favorable benefits of omega-3s in improving brain health, including memory and cognition. And I also forgot in this recipe, so the cabbage slaw, we are going to mix it up, and it also called for a little bit of honey, which I thought was pretty unique. And I'm not going to really measure it out. I'm just going to give a little squirt there just to give it some sweetness and play with the flavors a little bit. Another thing that I did that I always encourage you to do during your meals is whenever a recipe calls for some sort of vegetable and fat, always increase the amount of vegetable a little bit and decrease the amount of fat. So for example, for this cabbage slaw, it called for 2 cups of cabbage and 1/2 cup of mayonnaise, and a little bit more honey than I put in. Now that's not usually really that necessary, so as you heard me say earlier, I did 2.5 cups of cabbage and 1/4 cup of mayonnaise, and trust me, coupled with the fish that we've got going, the pico, everything else we've got working, you're not going to need that extra fat to kind of increase the flavor profile. I really think that, and you can see here, it's certainly covered between the mayonnaise, the honey, and the lemon juice. It's certainly covered and really is taking shape of that coleslaw. Not so dry anymore, but you're still going to get that fiber and the micronutrients from the cabbage themselves. And as we're moving over to the fish, this fish looks like it's starting to heat up nicely. You can tell it gets done when it starts to get that flaky, starts to kind of fall apart a little bit, which we can see is happening. So I'm probably going to give that about 1 more minute. And while I do so, oh, it smells really good. one. And while I do so, I'm just gonna lay out our corn tortillas. Now, it's all about preference. You can have these toasted, or you can just kind of have them straight. It's really whatever you like. I think for right now, I'm gonna keep them untoasted just so I can plate this, and then we can get started on the pico and the corn so we can get eating as soon as possible. Recipe, by the way, so when I originally purchased it, I purchased about a little over a pound of cod. And you can see I still have some left over here. You can see it's quite enough for 3 tacos. Usually I'd recommend about 2 tacos, but you know, the amount that somebody eats is going to be totally different depending on their appetite, their goals, their body weight, their age, their sex. So, you know, really hard to say, but generally speaking, what I purchased and what I'm preparing today is more than enough for, like, generously 4 to 5 servings. And so this meal, you know, it does take a little bit more of time, it's perhaps not one of my quickest recipes, but it's definitely worth it. It's, you know, it's a good idea if you've got guests over, or it's a Friday or Saturday night, and you know, you want to try something a little bit different, or maybe even impress somebody. I definitely recommend going to this recipe. And before I do that, I'm just going to, all right. And now, let me turn this timer on. I forgot last time. I did about 5 minutes on each side, maybe a little bit less. And then we're just gonna top this with about a spoonful of the cabbage slaw. And again, we're not done yet, even though in theory, we could technically eat this right now. And actually I wanna point out that what's really great about this recipe and why you could eat it right now without even doing the homemade pico or the corn is that, you know, generally we want to eat every single, so breakfast, lunch, dinner, we want our meals to be a complete meal. I say this all the time. A complete meal has a nice balance of fruits and or vegetables. You know, generally this would be like a dinner recipe, so totally okay that we, you know, we're not going to have any fruits with it. Maybe our fruit is going to be with a dessert. But nevertheless, you know, you want the majority of your meal to be vegetables. Well, you can see we've got that. And corn, yes, is considered a vegetable. And then you want 1/4 of your plate to be some sort of whole grain or minimally processed carbohydrate, the corn tortillas as well. So kind of doubles as like a source of energy, carbohydrate, as well as a vegetable. And then we've got our lean protein. So, you know, even though we've still got more to go, this right here, which I did in like 10-15 minutes, is totally acceptable as a balanced, nutritious meal. Though I would still recommend adding in a little bit more vegetables, whether that's just chopping up some fresh greens that you've got left over in your fridge, adding a little bit of the olive oil and leftover lime juice, just to give it a little bit more vegetables. And again, your vegetables are usually going to have that high fiber, which helps with bowel regulation, and also helps with weight management, and also lowering total and bad cholesterol levels. So that's really one of the reasons we want to keep our vegetable content high in all of our meals. Fruit does a very similar thing as well, and protein and carbs. So yeah. All right, and we are back. During the break, we just cooked up some corn. We figured that you didn't need to watch 7 to 10 minutes of corn cooking on the stove. But just to do that, I did the same spray, the avocado oil spray. You can totally do an olive oil spray. Again, just staying away from the canola or vegetable oils and trying to get a little bit more of those mono and polyunsaturated fats where and when we can. So I sprayed the corn as well as the skillet with the avocado oil because that's just what we're using today. And, you know, in retrospect, I will say if you have a grill, totally use it for the corn. You know, because we're inside today, we just had the pan. I do wish I microwaved it. I think that would have made it a little bit quicker, but nevertheless, the corn is done. So again, just a little bit of that olive oil, 7 to 10 minutes, medium to high heat, making sure that you're rotating it so you can see it gets blackened a little bit of everywhere. And then we're going to make a healthier version of the Mexican street corn, like I mentioned. So for that, usually there is like sour cream, mayonnaise, lots of cheese. We're gonna focus a little bit more on the vegetables and the lime juice with a little bit of cheese and a little bit of mayonnaise to still give it that feel. So in a mixing bowl, 1 juice from a lime. We're going to do about 3 tablespoons of cilantro. This is minced garlic from 1 clove of garlic. This is 1 teaspoon chili powder, 1 teaspoon garlic powder, and 1 teaspoon paprika. And then we got 1/3 cup of cojita cheese. And then about 2 tablespoons of a mayonnaise. And again, it's using that same mayonnaise from before. We're just gonna put that in here. We're gonna stir this up. We will stir that up. And just take these out of the way. And then we will layer it on our corn. So a lot of times I see this recipe at like upscale Mexican restaurants, and it tastes really good. It's like such a nice treat. And finally I decided to do this at home, and it honestly came out really well. And the whole idea here with this recipe today is to give you that feel of going out to like your favorite Mexican restaurant or Hispanic restaurant, but doing it here at home, doing it while supporting local business like the Danbury Farmers Market, and doing it in a way, again, that just promotes a little bit more nutrition than if you were out. So we are just going to take our brush and sort of layer it on like this. Now, it would be nice if we had pegs and we could do it through some side, on all the sides of the corn, but you know, you will definitely get the feel of it just by doing one side. Corn, again, is another one of those foods really high in fiber, primarily insoluble fiber, which means that it helps with stool regulation and really helps clear out your intestines. And corn also just great source of energy too. Okay, so this also, I only made 2 ears of corn, but the recipe that I used called for 6 ears. So as you can see, I've got quite a bit of the sauce left over. So if you were making this for a party, that's just enough. The recipe that I used is enough for about 6 ears of corn. Okay, last but not least, we are going to make the homemade pico. As you can see, we've already chopped up about 4 to 5 medium-sized tomatoes. Now you can really use, as I mentioned in the previous video, you can use any sort of tomato. I encourage you to mix and match. Now is the time to go back in your fridge and look at what sort of ingredients or vegetables may be going bad a little bit. So we just did heirloom tomatoes. We chopped up about 1.5 peppers. Now this isn't part of the recipe, but we peeked in our fridge. We saw that, you know, we had these peppers, and what better way to increase some of our vegetables. So I'm really just gonna eyeball this. This was about 1.5 peppers chopped up total. So I'm gonna eyeball this. And again, just another way to get a little bit more vitamin C, more nutrition throughout this recipe. Now, I totally don't throw these out. As you can see, I've got quite a bit of leftover ingredients. I definitely encourage you to save them and make them into, you know, maybe another salad or another recipe for later on. This is about 1.5 jalapenos. I like my salsa or pico a little bit more spicy, so that's why I did 1.5. This is 2 cloves of garlic chopped up. I'm gonna throw that in there. Again, I love a little bit of spice. This is half of a medium white onion. I like white, it's a little bit more spicy, a little bit more like crunch. If you do not like white onion, totally fine. You can do red onion as well. This is 1 juice of a lime. And this is 3 tablespoons of cilantro. So we are going to mix that up. And if you want to keep this a low sodium recipe, if you heard, everything that we have been doing today is low sodium. I have not, up until this point, I have not added any sort of salt. These are about 15 milligrams. You're gonna get a little bit in your mayonnaise, a little bit of sodium in that cheese, but other than that, this is a relatively low sodium. So if you are on like a DASH diet, Mediterranean diet, or looking to lower your blood pressure, or maybe have some sort of cardiovascular issue or disease, this is also a totally cardiovascular, heart healthy recipe. All right, so lastly, we are just going to top our tacos with this pico. Just do whatever amount looks good to you. Serve with the corn, which I will plate in just 1 second. And you are ready to go.